If only model railroading was like the Walmart motto, save money, live better. The latter, certainly. The former, in this box, is the beginning of an interesting saga that does indeed involve saving some money, has very little to do with the layout itself, but is worth sharing. After disemboweling the endless guts of brown paper in this box, I finally pulled out a modern Lionel box. Last episode, I spoke about moving outside the confines of strictly post-war, and this will be sure to confirm that. Yes, this is a legacy steam locomotive. It's a small Santa Fe 280 consolidation. Why has this come into my possession? Well, if you remember back from episode 1, where I briefly mentioned my couple legacy engines, one of those is my nickel plate road Berkshire. I at last committed to a plan I've had for a few years now and sold that Berk in pursuit of a legacy Santa Fe 3700 class Northern, a locomotive that I have always wanted even before acquiring the Berkshire. A good fellow by the name of Ryan West, who I connected with on Facebook, was very eager to pick up my Berkshire, but he wanted to trade instead of buy. After some back and forth negotiating, we settled on an agreement where I would credit the value of his consolidation toward the asking price of the Berkshire, so it was like a half trade, half sale. In the meantime, I was also talking to another gentleman, Bill Lipinski, who graciously agreed to sell me the Santa Fe 3751 he had in his collection. So although I had hoped to just buy the Northern with the money from selling the Berkshire, I was able to get a second engine out of the deal and spend less than full price out of pocket on the Northern. Save money, live better. Fortunately, too, it worked out with the 280 because it happens to fit on my layout, so it won't only be a display piece. I am reminded how much I do enjoy the smoke features on these modern steam engines. So while I wait for the great big Santa Fe Northern to arrive from Bill, I kept myself occupied with this new little engine and an overdue cleaning project. Now, this might look like an innocent job of organizing wires so they aren't hanging everywhere without labels. But no, this was all predicated by a foul smell that only intensified with each passing day in the garage. I had recently acquired a rolling toolbox and wondered if somehow a dead mouse came with me in the toolbox, but alas, nothing. As I looked around the garage, I eventually just spotted a mysterious brown lump on my shelf under the train table, which prompted me to quickly move all the boxes out, throw some away, and thoroughly clean and air out that shelf. Thankfully, no wires were eaten through, and only a couple insignificant boxes had to be thrown out. In a way, it was a nice distraction from the waiting period for the Northern to arrive, which it eventually did. The reason I wanted one of these models is twofold. When I look back on when I bought my Berkshire, I wanted it because I wanted a legacy steamer, not because I wanted that Berkshire. But now that Berkshire is owned by someone who really does want it. Ryan even shared some videos of it on his NKP-themed layout. I've always wanted a Northern like this. The TMCC version from the early 2000s was one of the first train videos I remember watching on YouTube. This one right here. I'll link it on screen and in the description. And we even have one of these engines on static display at the Transportation Museum in Wichita. So there's a lot of value and tangible connections here. I have many memories of driving under the bridge and seeing that distinctive telescoping smokestack. Now, I will quit my yapping for a moment for those of you that do enjoy the oddly satisfying sound of unwrapping plastic that comes with these unboxings. After having unboxed it, it was time to put it on the shelf where it will stay for the rest of its life. but not before putting on that telescoping smokestack. Now it can stay there forever. I can't believe you think I'd do that after all these years of waiting for this opportunity. No, it was time to take it outside, first for a special photo op with its little sister, the 280. Again, my profound thanks to Ryan West and Bill Lipinski for all of our arrangements that landed me with these beautiful additions to my collection. Even if the Northern can't run on the curves on my layout, that wasn't going to stop me from a little demo of which I'll share with you too. But again, after all these years, you think moving it forward 24 inches was enough for me? Not at all. In the course of dismantling my old big layout from my parents' basement, I have a ton of old Ross track that is poorly painted and covered in residual ballast. So in my infinite paternal wisdom, I gave Amelia a large sharp screwdriver and asked her to help me to knock out the leftover ballast in the 072 loop that I brought up with me from my last visit. Eventually then, I had a nice humble loop to be able to run the Northern. And when the time came, I was glad to be joined by my dear friend Stuart, a fellow model railroader and a Santa Fe scholar, to run the Northern on a few laps on the floor. Amelia joined and thoroughly enjoyed blowing the whistle. Although the cars behind it were certainly an eclectic combination, it sure is a beautiful engine to run nonetheless. But the new acquisitions don't stop there. As this is a layout update video, I suppose we should pivot back to the train table. This last summer, there was a huge Lionel train show right here in Lawrence, Kansas, just minutes away from my home, put on by the Lionel Operating Train Society, or L.O.T.S. I couldn't pass up the opportunity, and so I came back with some exciting additions and some new friendly connections. The first is another gondola to more easily use the gantry crane between the two loops. Next is the first of many yard light towers to come. Then an additional operating track, which although not as exciting, is very necessary. You'll see soon. Next is an operating water tower, and although this is not the version where you can see the water level deplete, it's an accessory I've wanted for many years. And lastly, an operating oil derrick, a nod to my father-in-law who is in the oil business. The other special thing about the derrick is the story behind buying it. I bought it at an auction during the convention, and since it was so physically close to home, I took our oldest daughter to it so she could see all the trains. Unfortunately, she was overwhelmed by all the people and didn't last long once the auction got started. I knew they hadn't gotten to the derrick yet, so I raced home to drop her off and hopefully make it back in time to bid. I walked back in and saw a gentleman holding it in front of everybody while the bidding was live, and without a second thought, I just threw up my hand in the air and started bidding, only to find out the gentleman holding the derrick was simply holding it in a queue while the actual current item was being auctioned. Once I realized that, I was able to get out, but not before accidentally jacking up the price for someone on something I didn't even want. So barely making it back in time, I still managed to snag the oil derrick. Anyways, for a good while, the planned location for these accessories has been chalked out on the table, but as I put them where I planned, I couldn't help but feel it was a bit unbalanced, and so I started to move some things around to try to smooth out the visual rhythm. Things like tall accessories versus short ones, architecturally similar and dissimilar, and so on. In the end, I came up with a solution that not only solves those problems, but also allowed me to redirect a couple of the roads that I think will seem less awkward and help tell a more cohesive story with the design of the layout. These locations will surely be permanent and will absolutely never be changed before the next episode. After that came the part I dread most about acquiring any new accessory, even if it's just a light: wiring. I began with the new operating track, which will allow me to dump cars into the elevator, which I have turned to face the opposite way it had been before. Again, a design choice for it to blend better right next to the gantry crane. After that came the water tower with an adorably small activator button, and then the yard light, which I also wired in tandem with the oil derrick. And if you have a sharp eye, you'll see that one critical feature of the oil derrick is missing, the bubble tube. But while at the convention, I was so lucky to come across a vendor at the show who literally had the two missing parts exactly to complete the derrick, both the tube and the cap that goes on top. And with that installed, it was time to drill, baby, drill. Maybe my oil pump here can generate some money to pay for the layout. Saving money? Hardly. Living better? That's what a hobby's for. Thanks for watching. More to come.